Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome to the latest episode of Beyond the Tape, a podcast where we focus on people doing rad things in the mountain bike industry, whether that's media, riders, mechanics, brand managers, or race team managers, whatever. Usually we would focus on people doing rad things in the Australian mountain bike industry, but in this one we've changed up a little bit. We are chatting with Jordi Cortes, the manager, the head of Fox Suspension Racing. So they do all the race prep, all the race tech, and help all the racers that are involved with the Fox racing. Downhill, XC, Enduro course, they just get their bikes running 100% in regards to suspension. So we chat with Jordi about a bunch of things, suspension related, but mainly we focus on his career and just talk shit for about an hour or so. Before we jump on to this podcast, so let's talk about our supporters. First up, we've got Trek. Now, last year I was unlucky enough to have to give back the Trek Fuel EXE. That bike was so damn good that I never wanted that to ever leave my house. It was quite a sad time. But in saying that, that bike was absolutely amazing. I loved how silent that motor was. The TQ motor providing 50 newton meters of torque. It was plenty of power to have a bunch of fun. Never felt like one of those big, heavy, overweight e-bikes you could ride with your mates and no one would know that you're kind of cheating a little bit, even though it's not really cheating when you're by yourself. But I absolutely love that bike. Super easy to use, super playful, super nice. Geometry was perfect. And if I didn't travel so much, it would still be here. I can't wait to be able to travel easier with e-bikes because then I'll have one in my quiver straight away. The perfect do-it-all e-bike for someone that just wants to ride and have a bunch of fun. Frank just released their new 2023 designs, a bunch of jerseys, a bunch of tech tees and a bunch of jumpers, a bunch of pretty much everything. Super lightweight material. Their air tech that they use in their jerseys make it feel like you're wearing nothing. The tech tees are second to none when it comes to quality. I absolutely love mine. Still going strong. Had it for a couple of years. Yeah, so jump over to frank.com.au, check out their new designs, use Beyond the Tape at checkout and get yourself a bit of a discount there as well. Fist are just about to jump into a new chapter, and I can't wait to see what these guys have got coming up. They are my absolute favorite gloves. Now that it's getting a little bit cooler, I'm wearing the Stocker a little bit more. Not quite their full cold weather glove, but it's a little bit heavier duty than their kind of signature gloves or even their breezer. So yeah, been loving the Stockers. They also provide a little bit more of a tighter fit around my hand, which I really enjoy. So been stoked on those. Make sure to use Beyond the Tape over on checkout there as well. Get yourself a bit of a discount off some of the best gloves in the world. Shred bike cleaner is absolutely amazing. I have been frothing over the degreaser after getting back from Derby and all that mud and crap that went through my drivetrain. It was a mess because when I'm away, I can't be effed cleaning my bike. Got back, sprayed the degreaser on, scrubbed it off a little bit. Shiny, brand new drivetrain. It's absolutely amazing. I can't believe how well it works and so easy to use. Jump over to shredbikecare.com.au and get yourself some of the best cleaners in the market. I just mentioned that I was down at Derby. I was lucky enough to be a part of the experience with Taylor Trails. These guys literally picked me up from the airport, grabbed my bags. All I did was rock up. They drove me to the right spot. We got some good food. Next day we went riding, did shuttles. They told us all of the best trails, what was running 100%. They never dictated what we had to do, but they did point us in the right direction. And I did find what they were saying was mostly true. I did deviate from what they told me a couple of times and found myself riding down some absolutely saturated trails. Again, amazing experience with these guys. Once we'd finished up on the trails, we went out to dinner, had a great time with a bunch of people I'd just met. All these similarly minded people joined up. It was cool to really be a part of that experience and see how well the ship runs. So if you want to get down to Tassie and experience the best trails, the best food, the best drinks, the best everything you can possibly want without any hassle. Just hit up Taylor Trails because they will make the best Tassie experience for you. Lead Out Sports offer some of the best, most high-end bike tools in the country. Their Pedro's stuff is quite affordable, yet somehow blows my mind every time how well made and how good of quality it is. Still can't believe that some of their stuff comes in at the price point they do. If you need some new tools for your for your bike, you need some new stuff in your kit, you need to make it look a bit cooler, get onto the Pedro stuff through Lead Out Sports. Absolutely amazing. Dirt surfers make 100% recyclable, 100% recycled material mud guards. Absolutely amazing custom designs for you, your club, your race series, whatever. I've got a fresh one coming. It will be dropping soon. So thanks to those guys for supporting us. And again, Capped Out Caps. If you want some custom stem caps to match your custom mud guards, hit those guys up. Anyway, this has been a long dribble fest of an intro, almost 7 minutes, so I apologise for that. As per usual, grab a beer, grab a water, grab a wine, grab whatever makes you happy and enjoy this podcast.
100%. There's no way I'd have people sitting around here with nothing to do. I want you out riding your bike or doing something fun.
True. Are you happy to jump straight in and get this thing started?
Yeah, sure. For sure.
Jordi Cortes, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for making the time.
Oh, thank you. I'm stoked to do it.
It's kind of a bit surreal and a bit weird to actually be chatting to you face to face and over the internet and having your answer back to me. It kind of leads to my first question. Like, I'm obviously a huge fan of yours, and there's a bunch of people that are huge fans of yours. What is it like kind of being famous in a small niche of the industry? And I guess, were you ever expecting to have that kind of cult fame that you've got now?
No, there's no way. If it's true, it's still really weird.
I definitely think it's true.
Yeah, I think it's like the only fish in a small pond kind of thing. I lucked into doing something that nobody else is really doing.
Yeah.
And it's at a time when people are focusing on that specific thing more and more. Probably 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I mean, we've watched it change over the years of people getting more and more interested in suspension. Or even back in the early days, it was just like, it's just kind of there.
Why do you think it's changing so much?
Well, I think it has to, right? It's such an enormous part of bikes. And bikes are getting so much better that sooner or later you have to focus on what makes that bike go. You're spending a ton of money on it. You might as well make it work.
I mean, like, now the products are so good, like, you don't have to focus on whether your 9-speed shifter that's been absolutely flogged, whether that's shifting. It all works really well now. So suspension's the last kind of avenue, right?
Yeah. And I think that's kind of where, or that's what we've wanted to demystify. Is just stop being afraid of it.
Yeah. Why do you?
Some should be afraid, but most people are capable.
Why do you think so many people were or still are afraid of messing around with their suspension or what's inside?
That's a good question. I don't really know. I think even the industry built it up to be something incredibly scary and hard to deal with, as in we're doing stuff that's so cool and so different than everybody else. And then people just kind of take that and run with it. It's like you build it up yourself as an industry to make it seem different than it really is. And building suspension is incredibly difficult, in especially bike suspension. Just the limited packages and the sizes you have of everything makes it so difficult. But tuning, or the base tuning of suspension, is really, really easy.
I think people definitely get lost nowadays from over information. Like there's so many people saying so many things.
Yeah.
Is it hard for you to kind of narrow down what you guys are saying on the dialed series, or what you say to others via the internet?
I don't think it's too hard to nail it down. Unfortunately, people are watching us work at a World Cup, which is the sharp end of the stick, really. So we're fiddling around, and that might give people the idea that that's what they need to do. But we're looking for that extra 2% of somebody that can exploit that 2%. Whereas most people haven't even set SAG.
Or don't know their SAG.
Or don't know their SAG, or couldn't tell the difference. So you kind of have to put everything in perspective.
Yeah, I mean, Strava is pretty important. Like your leaderboard stuff is up there for sure for some people, but it's no World Cup win, right?
It's not.
What differences do you think there are for those tunes and for those setups for the people that are pushing the pointy end to the general public that are just riding?
I think for the most part, it's just confidence. And if you can build a little bit more confidence, you can push that little bit harder. And when we're talking about the top 10 at a World Cup or an Enduro is a bit different, but at least in a World Cup that's so easily measurable, you're talking about the smallest mistake, or a half a mile an hour in a 300-meter section is everything. So if you feel more comfortable, you're going to push a little bit harder probably. Or that knife edge of balance of crash, don't crash can be spread out just a little bit more.
Do you think, for me, sometimes it surprises me that the faster, better riders can't ride around a weird suspension setup? Or is it to the point where they have to have it?
That's an interesting question. I think it comes back to consistency. I think as a really good rider, you can learn to ride almost anything. But it would probably be really hard to be consistent. And I think you see that in riders that win and then crash. That when you find a good setup and you stick with it and you learn it, your consistency should improve. Obviously, there's still a massive amount that relies on the rider themselves. But it's not Formula One. It's bike racing.
Yeah, I know, right? I can't wait for the day we've got like people adjusting suspension pressures on the way down the hill and doing all these other weird things. I mean, we're getting close from some of the things I've seen.
We are, but it's never going to make much of an impact because, at least in my opinion, because the rider is such a massive part of the equation. You move your cleat back a couple millimeters, you've just changed how everything feels.
Yeah, right.
So there's no other sport where a centimeter of body position changes the balance of the vehicle so much.
That's mainly because we are the biggest part of the overall weight.
Yeah.
What are there riders that will just ride around whatever and they just leave it pretty much standard, and then you've got the complete opposite end, which is Manar?
There were.
Okay.
Like Bernie and Eddie were famous for always just, like, Eddie would say, "Oh, I got these settings off Bernard." And Bernard would say he got his settings off Eddie. And nobody really knew where any of them came from.
Yeah, they weren't settings you gave them.
No, but little by little, that's changed. And last year, it changed quite a bit. We actually did some more testing with them, and they focused on stuff. So they're all kind of focusing on that a bit more.
And the results showed, right? Like they had a huge year.
Yeah, they had an amazing year. But they do prove the fact that it's not everything. You don't have to fiddle with it all the time.
Mm. Is there ever people that they come in and see you and you're just like, you don't need to change anything?
Constantly. And usually it happens with somebody that hasn't come in before.
Mm.
And they'll come in and you change everything because it's a disaster. And then they go ride and they're like, oh my God, that was amazing. I better go back and have them do it again.
Yeah,
okay.
It's
like, there's a point of diminishing returns. We can do it once. We can't do that twice.
You're not a miracle worker, right? Like,
right.
What's some of the biggest mistakes you see those guys kind of doing?
I mean, the biggest mistake is just not paying attention to where you're starting and just starting to turn knobs for no reason. So what we try to get everybody to do is just write down your settings. And if you make a change, write down that change. And then the whole thing with testing is just, did I like that more or less than the last time? And we get so many people that just turn knobs until they're in a corner and they have no idea where they started. Or we get, a lot of teams are bringing in data guys and they're running data systems that they think are telling them how to set bikes up. And we get guys coming in last minute saying, I don't know what's going on, but I don't like this. And you put everything back to where they were before, and it's like, oh, this is great. So there's a big gap there in between doing things in a professional way, like data and tracking everything, and the rider just saying, no, I don't like that. Which that's the biggest part. Somebody has to call it. You cannot set a bike up with data.
Yeah. Well, that
you
computer's
can see what
not riding the bike. Yeah.
Right. But again, it's like you could go to any of these riders and take 5 PSI out of the fork. They're still going to ride it fine because they're going to make an adaptation to that, but they're not going to be as fast as they were. So somebody has to sit there and go, no, I didn't like that. And it shouldn't be the guy running the data system.
No, definitely shouldn't be.
It needs to be riders that are paying attention to what is going on with the bike.
And that comes down to a trust and solid relationship between the two people, right? Like that's why Loic and I've forgotten his name now, but Loic and his mechanic Jack, they're like they're so dialed because they can just tell each other to get effed if they need to. Like it doesn't work.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, the rider has to ride the bike. So even if I think something's wrong and the rider's like, nope, can't do that, then that's up to them. I'm not going to tell them, oh, you're wrong.
Yeah.
I can't do it. So
is there like a certain amount of trust built from being able to tell them that they're wrong? I feel like that's bigger than just agreeing with people.
I think so. With certain people, that's definitely the case. I've worked with certain people close enough and long enough. But I think I'd rarely just tell somebody they're wrong. Because with most of these guys at this level, they're right about something. Whether they're right about the exact thing that they're talking about or whether there's something else going on. You need to be really careful about getting a big head and thinking that you know better and saying, nope, that's not how you do it. You do it like this.
Yeah, like how do you manage being not big-headed in such a team? Like all your guys are there and they've all been working on this. I'd say you have. Like, is there a certain? Do you have to take a step back every now and then and go, oh, maybe I don't know everything, or like, and do you manage your team in the same way? Like, are they in that same mindset?
I think we're all definitely of the same mindset, at least. Sorry, I keep moving around.
That's fine. Keep me awake.
I think when you work with so many people and we have a lot of products and everybody's doing things other than just racing, like we're always working on something. Whether it's, trying to figure out why this guy that came up that's not racing and his fork is doing this, or, we're always paying attention to whatever we can just to get a bigger picture. So I think in that way, things are so complicated, and learning how these things really function, not the basic setup, but the way hydraulics actually work and air springs. And there's so much there that keeps you humble, at least in my case. I think there's so much I don't know that it really does, for the most part, keeps me from telling somebody that they just don't know what they're doing. Even though there's plenty of those.
And like, to be a master of suspension technology, like you've got to know aerodynamics, fluid dynamics. You got to know the metals. You got to know everything that's going on within that shock or fork. Like, there's a lot happening, right?
There's a lot happening, and I'm not even close to knowing most of it.
How did you were you ever like just super interested in suspension before this?
I think not always, but almost always. I got involved with motorcycles at a pretty early age.
Okay.
And road raced for, a few years. And that was where suspension kind of started to make sense to me. And I think I've always been kind of not very good at a lot of things. So
welcome to the club.
Yeah, I'm always looking for a way to get better that doesn't involve me being better.
I love that.
So, I mean, it's kind of the wrong way to approach things, but hey.
It works. The old credit card training program is good. Yeah. So you were racing road bikes? Like
motorcycles? Road bikes. Yeah.
That's like, most people in mountain biking are coming back from that motocross background or being in outdoors, more kind of adventurous stuff, but road racing doesn't seem the same.
No, it's definitely not the same. But what was funny is that so many of those guys were riding mountain bikes to get fit that I've always ridden bikes. Like from a little kid, we'd take the bus up and ride BMX bikes down the hills. But that kind of rekindled the mountain bike thing.
Yep.
And I don't know. I think I just like bikes more. I still ride off-road moto. I don't ride street moto at all anymore. But I still love it, but it's not my thing.
How did you kind of progress? How did you end up going in the road moto thing? Were you up at like a national series, or were you kind of just local races?
We were lucky enough to have two tracks in Finion, which is was about an hour north of me, and then we had Laguna Seca, which was about an hour 20 south of me. And then we also had Thunderhill, which was down in Southern California, kind of. So at that time, like in the mid 90s, road racing kind of had a boom for local. We had AFM, which was the local governing body. And so you could race every other weekend if you wanted to, or if you could afford it.
Expensive sport, right?
A really expensive sport, especially if you end up crashing a couple times.
What kind of how did you get into it? Like, what attracted you to that side of?
I think I'd bought a street bike in high school and would just kind of rip around the hills. And there was a really strong group of kind of street racing going on in Berkeley, Oakland at the time.
I think the statute of limitations is worn off for anything you did on that, so you should be good.
And I started working at a motorcycle shop, and those guys were all like, "What the fuck are you doing? Like, this is so dumb." It's a lot like Strava. It's like you might think you're fast, but until you actually race, you have no idea.
Mm.
And it's true. You have no idea. So I just went from street racing to working in a shop to actually racing on a track. And it scared the crap out of me. And then I decided to go ride mountain bikes for a while.
Yeah, I don't think I could ride a road bike on a track, eh? Like that genuinely
so
scares.
Fun,
It scares the actual crap out of me. So is that moto shop where you first kind of got into mechanics and started wrenching on things and playing around?
I mean, I've always done it as a kid. I grew up relatively poor and with a single mom. So it was like, fix your shit or it's broken.
Mm.
Half the time it was try to fix your shit and break it worse. But I think that's how you learn, from bikes to cars, motos. You just figure it out.
Mm.
But the shop was where I really started looking at suspensions. Like, oh, you can turn this knob and it does this.
Yeah.
So that's definitely where it started.
And I guess that's a good place to start because everything is so much bigger. There's less to mess up.
It's so easy.
Is it?
Yeah. I mean, when you get into the sharp end, again, it's hard with just figuring out how things work, but working on moto suspension or truck suspension, everything is just so much bigger and more durable.
Mm. Fox is obviously involved with all three of those things. So they got, they're involved with everything, right?
Yeah, a bit.
Is there much kind of consolidation of technologies that you've seen? So is something that's in a trophy truck or on a moto transferable to a bike? Or is it completely?
In some ways, yeah. There's definitely crosstalk of especially with theories and principles, things like that.
Mm.
And I think that's where the bike industry's kind of been in the dark ages for a long time, is that a lot of people have figured this stuff out. And then bikes came and tried to reinvent everything.
Mm.
And then we try to reinvent it again every 2 years. But there's a lot of information out there. And I think gradually bikes are starting to grab hold of that and figure out how to make things work really well. And within the next few years, we're going to see some really cool stuff.
I mean, we're in an industry where we literally try to reinvent the wheel. So it's crazy.
It is.
So after the moto shop and stuff and working through there, and you got back into mountain bikes, how did you kind of progress into getting higher up in the mountain bike mechanic scene?
I don't know. It all just happened.
You just woke up one day and you just at Fox.
I mean, in a way, I went and worked at a fab shop for like 10 years.
Oh, really?
Building all kinds of random stuff. So I learned a lot there. But was away from suspension work.
Mm.
And gradually that kind of went away. And I was working for Specialized for their cross-country mountain bike team for a while as a mechanic. And I did a really brief stint with the American Cannondale team.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of in the middle of the year, that went away. And luckily, I had a friend at Fox he started the race department here.
Oh, sick. Yep.
And he'd been talking to me a few times. And finally, things just worked out. And I applied here, and that was it. That's where I started really learning.
What were you making at the fab shop? I don't think I've heard that before. Like, what were you?
We did a little bit of everything. We built everything from roll cages and welding seams on track cars to art installations.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. Like, you wake up every day and do something new.
And
That's the hardest fucking thing I've ever done. Like, it's no joke.
Really?
Those
How so?
are insane.
How so?
It's just the level of detail and the things you have to know. You have to be really gifted physically, just that eye-hand coordination, and just the amount of knowledge you need to make things work. I watched some of these the car guy videos, like Casey Kunshausen and all these, just these guys that are building these hot rods, and you're just like, holy shit, that's like days of work just to make this little like gas filler cap.
It is nuts, eh? Like,
It's nuts.
I spent a bit of time around cars and around a workshop, and without the fab side of things, it's a project cast is years of work. Like, and then you see a YouTube video and it looks like 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
You're literally just burning money with a welder at some point. Like, you might as well just set it on fire.
Oh man, for sure.
That's
the other thing is you can't make a mistake because it costs so much money.
Yeah.
You're cutting tubes or something, you cut 1/2 inch short. It's not like, oh, well, that's fine. Like, oh, well, that was $100.
I remember, like, I chatted, completely off topic here, but I chatted to a guy he was a welder on an oil rig. And if they fucked up, it was $500,000 because that's what that day cost.
Yeah.
Because no one else could do anything else. And I'm like, yeah, okay.
Luckily, that industry seems to have some money.
Yeah, I don't know where they get it from, eh? Yeah. So you end up working at Fox. Were you just a technician at that time, or?
Yeah, I got hired not really knowing much. I could work on bikes really well, and I knew how things functioned. And I knew like the basics of how bearings functioned and press fits and, how things were actually assembled. But as far as hydraulics functioning or air springs or coil springs, even for that matter, I really had no clue. And I remember the guy who kind of trained me taking apart a shock and laying all the valves out on the table and all these little parts. And I'm like, fuck, I'm never going to learn this. There's no way I can put all this back together. Yeah. And in the beginning, I've got all my books and drawings and everything. I'm like, okay, this one goes here and this one goes here. Don't fuck this up. And now it's like I've just got a bucket and I've dumped everything in it. And I'm just like, oh, yeah, that one goes here. This one goes here. It'll be fine.
Yeah, throw it all in a basket and we'll deal with that later. Yeah.
It's funny how quickly you pick things up and figure out that it's not that difficult.
Well, I mean, it's kind of repetitive, right? Like,
yeah, for sure.
As hard as it does seem from the outside, when you do it 2 days, you would have learned how to build a shock in 2 days easily at a race.
Yeah. Assembling and disassembling stuff is not hard. Doing it consistently and doing it to a certain level of quality can be tricky, but again, it's not hard.
Practice, just practice.
Yeah.
Simple.
Practice. Yeah.
Was it nerve-wracking having the weight of your work being a part of the riders' race performance for that first few times?
I mean, that's the most stressful thing. Whether the product is good or not isn't really something we can control in the field. But whether your work was good or not is 100% you. And that's where most of the stress comes from.
Yeah.
Of just not wanting to fuck somebody's day up.
And were you starstruck by any of the riders or anyone coming in? And no, I
don't get starstruck with anybody really.
It's because you're being a celebrity.
No, it's not that. It's just like we're all just doing what we want to do, and to get recognition for being selfish isn't really all that cool.
True. Yeah.
Everybody has something to offer, and if people are stoked watching their favorite rider, that's amazing. That's great. But none of us are curing cancer.
True. It's very true. Definitely helping people through it from what I've heard in a few stories, but yeah. I guess like you mentioned it there, you you've got no control around what a product, the quality of a product that you're working on at the field. You've just got the control of your quality of work. Every single bike company has had shit go wrong. Like everyone. People can argue with me.
I think every single company, period.
Yeah.
No matter what industry you're in, you're going to do something wrong.
Is it hard to work around some of the mishaps or even current mishaps that some of the Fox stuff has? Like, how do you kind of mitigate the chances of something going wrong in a faulty design?
Yeah, it sucks. I mean, that's the worst part of the job, I think. And at least from my position, the best thing you could do is be absolutely honest and go back and try to fix it, deal with it as best you can. But, we have definitely had our trials, especially in the last year or so. Luckily, the tide's turning now and we're looking pretty good. But that's definitely one of the hardest things, is explaining to somebody why their shock has done a certain thing 3 times over a week and not being able to actually remedy the problem.
Especially when it comes down to a 2-cent O-ring or something,
or whatever
like
it
tiny.
Is. Luckily, we have a pretty amazing team, and we work closely with engineering, because normally we see things first. So I think everybody wants their product to be the best, and it's frustrating when it isn't. But you can't just fix things overnight. That's what I've learned.
What are you talking about? You just call the factory in China and go, hey, can you make some of these parts these little bit different things? Yeah.
COVID sure didn't help any of that either.
Oh, mate. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess it's the same as when you're tuning that pro rider's suspension. Is these guys, the engineers, are trying to balance on this knife edge of lightweight, performance, and durability. Yeah, it's a very hard thing to balance.
It's fucking hard. And, you read a lot of the comments and you get so frustrated just because, which you probably shouldn't ever do, but the lack of understanding of just how tricky these things are, and then dealing with manufacturers that are changing things all the time, and, brands that are changing things all the time, and you're trying to accommodate everybody. It's tricky. Those guys, man, they do a pretty awesome job.
I think relating to those pink bike comments, I think the Inside Line podcast crew said it the best the other day. They're like, everyone wears a pair of pants. Like, everyone's worn hundreds of pairs of pants in their lifetime. But if you give someone material, they can't make a pair of pants. Like,
yeah,
the best analogy I've ever heard. I love those guys.
Yeah.
And then getting back to your story, we're kind of going all over the place, but at what point did you kind of become the manager or the leader of the team or the head of the race production?
Again, that was completely out of my control.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I was the one that took on the most work and learned the most as far as the techs. A lot of people just kind of did what they did and they were cool with it. And I was constantly trying to figure out how to make things better. I built a lot of relationships in the industry too, just talking to people and asking what they wanted and what they thought. And I rode quite a bit. I still do. And then the guy who hired me, my boss, quit and decided to go somewhere else. So they just kind of said, okay, you can do it now.
You're like, you sure?
Oh, shit. And that's been a rough transition.
Has it?
Yeah. I think I'm a pretty shit boss.
That's just probably the best quality in a boss, though, is knowing that they're shit.
Yeah. My head's off doing other things most of the time, and then I have to snap back and realize that I have to do managerial stuff or go to HR or fill out these forms. I'm like, fuck, I don't want to do that.
I just want to play with shims.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, like, I'm in the States for 5 months a year, and then I'm in Europe the other time. And trying to corral 2 different departments, one European, one United States, and trying to keep track of what's going on. And US will have meetings that are in the middle of the night in Europe that I miss. And then when I'm over here, I'm not a part of any of the European stuff for the most part.
Mm.
So it just gets kind of cumbersome. And really all I want to do is work on stuff and deal with riders and try to make the product better.
How have you gone about improving or learning on the management side of things with that, especially with personnel? Because dealing with people is 1 million times harder than dealing with a shock.
Fuck, I hate it. I really don't like it. Some people thrive on leadership and figuring out how groups function, and I don't understand teaching people how to be functional humans.
Yep.
Luckily, we have some pretty amazing people in my group, so there's not a whole lot of that. But we just went through yearly reviews where you're like, hey, you didn't do this, or you did do this. And I don't want to do it. I can't stand it.
And admitting that is huge, though, like in my opinion.
Yeah.
But for you guys, it seems like it's basically an assembly of nomads that tend to be able to do everything by themselves and work autonomously as much as possible.
You'd think, and for the most part, that is relatively true. But on the other hand, you got this pretty weird job where you're traveling a bunch, and it's not exactly a high-paid industry.
I thought you were millions.
So, yeah, it's more of a passion project for most people, I feel like. So, you get some weird personalities.
Mm.
And myself definitely included. That can be hard when you put all those personalities together and try to get them to function.
True. Trying to use motorbike parts to run a car. Yeah. You touched on the fact you're away for like 6 or 7 months of the year. Like I'm good friends with Anna and Peltari, and see Troy and Connor as well. And I guess some people forget that you and these guys have personal lives outside of riding. Life does exist.
Yeah.
Is it hard to kind of manage, well, not manage your life, but live your life in some sort of normality when you're split between 2 different hemispheres? And
I think it's impossible. Luckily, my girlfriend for some reason seems to be able to do without me for long periods.
Yep.
I don't know if that's a good thing or not.
I know, right?
Yeah, I think in some ways it ruins you for a lot of things because you're basically traveling for free.
Mm.
So if somebody's like, oh, you want to go do this when you're back? Like, no way. I'm not going to spend money on a flight and a car and a hotel.
Yeah,
I do that for free all year long. But you also don't really see anything when you're traveling for work. You go to the same parking lots and you set up the same tent and you hang out with the same people, which is great as a job. And we've been to some amazing places, and you do get to ride your bike in some pretty cool spots. But you also sleep in some really shit hotel rooms and eat some terrible food for the majority of your year.
Mm.
And I'm not really getting any younger. So that stuff starts to wear on me. And I'm kind of a princess anyway. Like, I need my body pillow and a nice mattress. And I can't deal with these Euro hotel rooms.
They're ruthless, eh?
Dude, they're rough.
I hear like stories of where mechanics and stuff are sleeping. I'm like, I don't think I could do that.
in my mind is just unacceptable. And in a lot of ways, you get what you pay for. And I get it that these teams are running on small budgets, but I don't have the answer for it, but something has to be done because this is the top end of our sport. And you got people sleeping in bunk beds, 6 people to a room. Or, that's probably the best case scenario. Like some of the stuff I've heard from what mechanics are getting is just, there's no wonder that there's not always a whole lot of top end people working at races, and the turnover rate can be pretty high.
Turnover rate's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like outside of the maybe 4 guys that are kind of dedicated personally to such a like they're not getting millions and they're sleeping in a 1x1 box on the truck, but their passion just keeps them coming back.
Yeah, which is a bummer.
Especially when you know that the company running that factory team is huge.
Yeah, it is. I don't necessarily blame the companies, but we are really the only sport that sponsors itself.
I know.
I mean, how many outside sponsorships do you see at bike races? So it's got to tell you something. We're either not supportable as a World Cup event, or we need to figure out something.
Well, we've done it before. Like
we have done it before.
Like it blows my mind that we still have Mercedes or whatever from the outside, but I don't know what they actually do. Yeah, I don't know what they actually do, and then that's it. Yeah, they pay for our governance.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have the answer to it. I'm not a marketing genius, but we tanked the sport somewhere along the road.
But you guys are in somewhat a marketing genius because the Dialed series is the most popular series in mountain biking, in my opinion. Like
that's amazing.
Like everyone is on it. Like everyone wants to watch that thing when it comes out.
That's wild.
How did that kind of come about? Where was the idea from?
I think like organically it probably started with Jobo at Steel City Media. And we would always kind of do these little cameos, and then he did the little Between Two Puzzlers clips. It was like me and Marshy in one, and Luca and I, and Loris and I. And I think those were so well received. And then my boss at the time was like, we need to do a better version of this. And we started that first season of Dialed. And really, it's just grown on its own. It's a weird thing. There's no oversight to that entire show. Jake and Schaefer film it, edit it, and put it out in 24 hours.
It's insane.
Every day. Nobody's going, yeah, this is pretty good. You shouldn't say that. And we've gotten caught a couple times. And like, you probably shouldn't do that. But for the most part, they've done an amazing job.
Their work, like being in media myself, and then looking at what those guys do every day and the quality of work they are putting out is ridiculous. For me, it kind of overshadows the video itself. Like I watch it to see the quality of camera work and seeing what they're doing. It's just like, holy crap.
Those kids are wild. And Jake did a maker's video for Race Face just off the cuff. Didn't know who he was. Sent in this submission, and people were like, oh, you should look at this. This guy's pretty good. And I was like, he's fine.
He's all right.
But my boss at the time, Marshall, really pushed for Jake. And then Jake connected with Schaefer. I don't think they had met before Dialed.
Yeah, right. Weird.
Yeah.
You think they're like high school best buddies? Like they've been around each other forever.
I think they knew each other through YouTube.
Yeah, right. What again, that takes us right back to you being the face of it and being the famous guy now. Like, is that, and now you're getting, would you be just getting influxes of suspension setup art questions and people coming up to you at races? And
races, not a ton. Social's pretty bad.
Yeah, okay.
Like just the dumbest stuff. Things that you could have figured out with 5 minutes in your owner's manual.
Mm.
And that stuff kind of bugs me, especially like maybe it shouldn't, but whatever.
Right,
you know, weekends, you're like, oh man, I did this and this. What do you think I should do? And I don't know. I would never do that to somebody.
Mm.
But I think social media has kind of opened up that door for contact of like, you don't have to think about it. You just message whoever.
Yeah. There's this weird website just came out called Google. I don't know if people have heard of it. Like,
yeah. And a lot of times that's my question. Well, what have you tried? Oh, nothing. I just thought I'd message you first.
Mm.
Well, you know, have you tried calling our service line? Because those guys are pretty good.
Yeah. They probably know more than me. Like,
they do. Absolutely. They know more than I do. Like, I have no clue. I can work on 2 products and that's about it.
Not reading owner's manuals or manufacturer instructions is my number one pet peeve.
Oh, dude, it's so bad.
It pisses me off so much. Like,
get it. Especially with 40s. You have to put them in a certain place in the clamps. And it says it in the owner's manual. And I bet 50% of the 40s I see aren't there. And you're like, hey, man, you got to move that. The lowers are going to smash into the crown.
Mm.
Oh, really? What should it be?
Here's a book.
Yeah.
The scariest thing is they were probably put on by a mechanic.
Absolutely.
It scares the shit out of me.
Dude, we had a guy cleaning fork seals. I couldn't understand him, whatever he said. And he kept saying dot. I'm just using the dot. And it's like, whatever. We'll stop fucking him up. We figured out he was saying dart. And he was sticking a dart down the fork seal and scraping them out and putting a big gouge around the stanchion. This happened 5 times before somebody said they went to his toolbox and found a dart and took it away from him.
I thought you meant he'd taken the lowers off. They were like, oh my God.
Yeah.
That's
special.
Next level.
Yeah.
That almost deserves some sort of award.
It does. Yeah.
I'm speechless now. That's crazy.
You pay peanuts.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Do you have much of a relationship with the mechanics as well as the riders, or is it purely between you and the riders?
Both. Yeah. It really depends on the rider and the team. Mm. We generally like to have both people.
Mm-hmm.
Just because if both people know, anytime you're telling one person and they have to tell another person, something's going to get mixed up.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, we like the mechanic to bring the rider over. There's a few mechanics that I trust well enough to be like, go do this, and it gets done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. That's definitely getting better. Like XC teams, normally we only see the mechanics. It's almost impossible to get a rider to come over and actually do a setup.
Yep.
It happens every once in a while, but not nearly often enough. Enduro guys, I think it's more the riders than the mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to say it, but I would think enduro mechanics are probably busier than downhill mechanics.
100%.
Yeah. So I think that's why we'll generally see the rider come by.
90% of a downhill race is waiting. So
yeah.
Yeah. It seems like the relationship between I guess Manar, yourself, and now Lyle, that seems to be like the best, most trustworthy kind of operation at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, Greg and I have known each other since my first race.
Okay.
Which was South Africa, 2016 or 17. I lose track of the year. But yeah, so, and he's one of the better riders to deal with because he is always on. He's always looking for something. And he's got a pretty good feel. So if I have something, I can give it to him and get an answer.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people, you give them something, they disappear for 3 months. And then they show up at a race and tell you they didn't like it.
Yep, sick.
Yeah.
Was it hard keeping that prototype bike out of the Dial Series last year?
Which one?
Was he Santa Cruz?
He wasn't on it.
Really? Damn it. I never saw his bike in any of the Dialed videos. So I'm like, he's on something different.
No. They didn't get those until after the season. Yeah.
It's like, he has to be on something. There was never his bike ever in those. And you'd see like Schaefer or someone just kind of go down to the suspension, then come back up again. I'm like,
No, I don't think so. I know he wasn't on the proto bike, but
yeah,
I don't think there was anything else going on there either.
Is it difficult working around protos and their suspension setup because they're not set in stone? Or is there a certain kinematic that they've already...
No, it's probably harder working with a production bike that's no good rather than a proto that has hopes of getting better. True. So many people call it a prototype when there's really nothing that can be changed. So in my mind, that's not a prototype if you can't make a change.
That's definitely not a prototype. That's
and that happens more than you would think.
It's an unstickered bike.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just unlaunched. It's not a prototype.
I think we go again back to riders setting up their bikes and trying to find that perfect suspension setup for them. And then you mentioned badly designed bikes, like kinematics and knowing what the charts are and knowing the numbers and stuff is sometimes bigger than actually getting the shock set up correct. Like I've ridden bikes that should have been amazing, but the kinematics just ruined everything. Do you guys have any input into bike design at all? Or?
It's rare.
Okay.
There are definitely some companies that will ask for some advice, and you can kind of work with engineers. For the most part, they just do their own thing. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
That blows my mind. Like, if you're putting a suspension in your bike, why don't you deal with the people that are making that as well?
I don't know if it's ego or if it's thinking that you've come up with something that nobody's ever seen in the entire world. That, I don't know what it is, but I don't know why you wouldn't ask opinions.
It's like these high pivot bikes that are a new revelation.
Yeah, it's like everybody has to have a high pivot now.
Yeah, but it doesn't suit everyone. Like,
nope.
Yeah. We're getting to the end of your time, and there was a few listener questions I kind of wanted to ask. If we can just jump into that for 5 or 10 minutes and then wrap it up. Spin That Up, who is a Lockie from SRAM Australia, or SRAM.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, everywhere now. He wanted to know what SAG you were running. And he also wants to know if shock tunes are a 1%er or a 10%er, like custom shock tunes, like down to the shims, or if it's just some magical woo-woo that kind of helps marketing.
That's a tough one. I think if you're talking the shock tune's pretty good, and then you're adjusting it per rider, I think that's really a point of diminishing return. You're not getting a whole lot. With some shocks, I think rebound is a bit more critical to play around with for somebody like Jackson versus somebody like Greg, where you're talking 100 kilo difference.
It probably is too. I finally saw
Greg hasn't ridden in a few months, so I'm sure it is.
Yeah. I finally saw Jackson down here in Threadbow, and he's not a big person. He is very small.
But I mean, Troy's proven you don't have to be a big guy to ride a downhill bike fast.
I think Troy would have the biggest power to weight ratio in the whole scene. It's
quite possible.
It's dumb between him and Gravesy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Jared's another special one.
Matt Russo Photography, he asked about the biggest, the most watched part of your Instagram stories last year. But how do you deal with, have you got all your bags back from the 2022 season? And how do you kind of deal with losing all that stuff and having it go pretty much everywhere in the world?
Yeah, I think I have everything back. Honestly, it took so long to get most of the stuff back that I'm not really even sure what was there. I don't think anything got stolen out of the bags, but there was a lot of expensive equipment. And there's some things I'm like, didn't I have this in my bag? But I did get all the bags back finally. It's funny, they lost a unreleased Nomad that I'd probably ridden for about a month and a half, and then it disappeared. Shit. And by the time I got the bags back, the bikes had been launched, and I'd bought one of the production ones already. So it's like,
yeah, it was.
That was I don't know. It's really just stuff, and at the end of the day, it's kind of like whatever. And luckily, I worked for a big company that was really supportive, and they're just like, "Hey, go buy what you need." But if I was on my own or going on vacation, and Lufthansa lost everything I own and then disconnected all their phone lines and wouldn't respond, that's awful.
That's crazy.
It would have ruined your vacation. They still have not responded.
Yeah, right.
They sent my bags back, one to my Asheville office, one to a house I was staying in at one of the Enduros, and one home. And I have no idea why they picked those places, but that's where it went.
That's insane. We had a guy here on a YouTuber, and he literally just got his AirTag stuff, went to the Melbourne airport and went to the baggage claim and literally just found his AirTag. That's the point he had to go to get his bag back.
I did that in Ireland. I flew back. I left the race a day early, flew to Ireland to get my bag, and they wouldn't let me in the room.
Really?
And Lufthansa had disconnected all the phone lines. So you'd pick up the phone to call the Lufthansa desk, and it would just go click.
Yeah, wow.
And I even talked to the police, and they're like, "Hey, we can't. There's nothing we can do. This is all like aviation security."
Yeah, right.
So I ended up just flying on to the next race with nothing.
That's fucking wild.
It's crazy. And at that point, it was happening to so many people.
Oh, yeah. It was ruthless.
Yeah. You're still hearing stories of luggage found in storage containers and, the airlines just dumping things.
Yeah. It's easier to get rid of it than actually deal with the problem.
Yeah.
This one's kind of funny. Mr. Zach, 1980, he's like, would you rather use aftermarket fork leg lubricant or eye wash on your forks? So, because they probably do about the same thing.
They probably do about the same.
And
Man, there's so much junk when it comes to buying bike stuff.
Mm.
I think I got into some argument with somebody at Eurobike once because they were selling stanchion lube.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's cool if it's just a seal lube and you're reducing friction. They're like, oh, yeah, and it increases time in between services. And then they got really mad at me because they were like, well, Fox won't license our product and now nobody wants to buy it. It's like, well, yeah, because seal lube doesn't change the time it takes in between service intervals.
Yeah.
That's a whole different deal. And they just could not understand it.
Doesn't matter how much snake oil you drop down there. You still got to surface your suspension,
right?
And
then it's like people selling all kinds of stuff. You put it in your fork and the seals start to melt.
Oh, just e-bike specific stanchion lube.
E-bike specific's another one. I just bought a set of grips and they say e-bike approved. No shit.
Fucking geniuses.
It is genius. Somebody's just making money off those things.
Last one I asked from these guys is it better to adjust your ride height by sliding fork tubes up on a Fox 40 or adding spaces, taking spaces on the head stem?
That's two different things. Moving stanchions is changing geometry. So if that's what you want, then that's the better way to do it. But adding bar spacers is just changing body position.
Mm.
So if that's what you want, do it that way. But it is two different things.
Yeah. Two separate things I think get mixed up.
If your bike is great and your hands are just too low, then add a stem spacer. If you want your bike slacker, then push the stanchions up. Yeah. To start getting real long stanchions one day. Exactly.
Yeah. There's three questions I like to ask to wrap up every kind of podcast. What advice would you give to anyone that wants to kind of make it into, I guess, being a high-end mechanic or perhaps managing a race team?
I get asked this a lot, and even on social. And I think the biggest thing you can do is just start. There's no secret to getting involved.
True.
Right? Like the way to start any job is by applying.
Yeah.
And if that means starting at a bike shop, then start at a bike shop. If that means I definitely would start at a shop before I started at a team, unless you're pretty accomplished. And then just start studying. Whether the information's right or wrong, that's up to you to figure out. But there is a lot of information out there.
Yeah.
There's so many good websites to learn about kinematics. And I don't know. I watched something a couple days ago where some guy was talking about cleaning his bearings out and then packing them full of grease and slamming the seal on. Like, well, if you spent 5 minutes on a bearing website, you'd realize that's not how you pack bearings.
Yeah.
Right? You just do some learning, figure stuff out, because there's a lot of bad information out there.
Yeah. And learning how to decipher that is the biggest part of learning. Yeah.
And if there's a known process for doing things, chances are it's pretty good. You don't have to reinvent it.
Yeah. Who would have thought, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy. Is there anything you kind of regret or would have done differently up to now in regards to like your career?
No, I've never really been a career person, honestly.
Yeah.
I do things that I like to do, and when I don't like to do them, I probably won't do it anymore.
I rate that so highly.
Yeah. You can't always have everything perfect, but hopefully most of it is better than not. And even if you don't like it, do it well.
True. Yeah. It's no point doing stuff half-assed.
Yeah.
Last question seems to be kind of the hardest for some people, but if you're completely lacking motivation, say you're in Fort William and it's an early morning and you're sleeting and stuff, how do you kind of get motivated to get out there and do your job? Like, do you have any music you listen to, or is there anything you kind of do to get up and out of bed?
man, I've definitely not done some of these things plenty of times and been completely unmotivated at work.
Yeah.
I think we all have. Really, the most important thing for me is to build good habits and stick to those habits while it's important. I have to basically eat well. I have to exercise. I will do whatever. I'll ride a bike in the morning. I'll go for a run. I'll go to the gym. I'll just do stuff in the hotel room, but some kind of movement. And for me, 90% of the time, it means staying away from booze during a work week.
Yeah.
I don't think it's okay to show up to work hungover, ever. Even though it happens, and I've done
it. Man, it's got to be hard. It's really got to be hard.
Especially after downhill and everybody wants to party, and then there's still work the next day.
And those downhillers can party, eh? People say they've stopped, but then
they have not stopped.
No, it's just less prevalent in people's eyes. Like, it's wild.
Yeah.
Rad. Well, I better let you get back to work. Thanks for sharing your lunch break with me.
Oh, thank you.
I appreciate you coming on, and can't wait to release this out to the public and get some feedback.
I appreciate it.
There we go. I hope you guys enjoyed another rad episode. Jordi is the man when it comes to working with athletes, making sure they go as fast as they possibly can on their bike, whether that means suspension tweaking, playing head games, or just being there for a bit of support. He does it all. Now, if you enjoy this podcast, make sure you support those who support us. Our supporters again at Trek, Franked, Fist, Shred, Lead Out Sports, Tailored Trails, Dirt Surfer, and Capped Out Caps. Go and buy some of their rad merch. Use Beyond the Tape at checkout or Beyond the Tape 10. Get yourself a bit of a discount. Let them know that you went there because of us. Also, if you want to support the podcast, jump over to the merch store, grab some mud guards, grab some tech tees, or grab something. Donate a coffee. Every little bit helps to keep this podcast running. If you don't want to spend any money and still support the podcast, yell out to your nana, your mum, your dad, your friends, your dog, your parakeet, whatever, and just share the podcast around. That's the best way to do this. Word of mouth is crazy and free. Anyway, thanks again for listening, and until the next one, go out and enjoy yourself. Have a bunch of fun.